online, so there's 4 of us. So we will get started this evening. Welcome to our monthly Power Board meeting for April. We'll get started right in it. Item number 1 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Did everyone get a copy of it and have a chance to look through? Any questions, comments? Okay. Do we need to make a comment that it's the amended agenda, or does that matter? I know it was, I saw that it was posted in time, but I just don't know, just to make that clear. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the amended agenda for the April 2nd, 2024 meeting.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay, Dick did the first, Andy did a second. Todd, do you want to start us on a vote?
Sure. Spriggs, aye.
Andy?
Palmer, aye.
Dick?
Saunders, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for March. So again, everyone have a chance to get those and look through them. Any comments, questions?
No, I'll go ahead and approve the minutes for
Okay.
the month of March.
I'll second.
Okay, so Andy did the first and Dick did the second. Todd, do you want to start us on a vote again?
Yep. Spriggs, aye.
Dick?
Saunders, aye.
Andy?
Palmer, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone. So, new business, we have a recommendation to the City Council for an approval of a resolution authorizing the tax certificate and agreement for UAMPS firm power supply project and related matters. So we'll turn the time over to Rick.
Does that sound exciting or what? Is Matt on?
I am on.
Okay, great. So this item is a kind of a follow-up, if you will, or an extension of, if you remember back in December, we approved a prepay resolution for the gas for the Payson project. This is kind of its first cousin. It's the prepay for the Red Mesa and the Steel Solar projects. So same, correct me if I'm wrong, and we have Matt Hastings with UAMPS online with us, that if you have any questions, feel free to ask Matt. I'll do my best, but it's the same. Hang on just a second, let me share my screen. And you should have got the UAMPS talking points, which covers the vast majority, I think, of what needs to be done there. So same idea with the basic underlying premise of, I think the important point is going through this process, we hope to save around 8% on the costs from these two projects, which obviously anything we can do to lower costs to us gives us a better opportunity to keep costs lower to our customers. And again, this is from the talking points that was sent out. It's a mechanism allowed by the IRS to facilitate these transactions that would allow us to be able to take advantage it takes the advantage between the taxable and non-taxable bond rate. Is that correct, Matt?
Yes.
Okay. Don't let me get too far astray, because and here the actual closing hasn't taken place yet. What this resolution does is it authorizes either myself or Jeremy to sign the tax certification or certificate when we get all those pieces into place. And so the form of that is in the back. what else do you want to, should I say in a summary format, Matt?
I think the real essential part is that the power that is purchased from the solar projects, as with the Payson prepay, the power that is produced has to be used to serve the Washington City load. And so if there's no concern about utilizing that power to serve customer load, um, for the term of the PPA for the next 25 years. That is kind of the clincher in my mind. If there's no concern on the qualifying use provision, which is, in essence that you're going to serve customer load with that generation, then it's a no-brainer in my mind.
And didn't they indicate even if it was to be sold to another UAMPS member, it would still be okay on that provision?
Yes, that would work as well.
So as long as it stays within the UAMPS family, if you will, because we're all qualified utilities to do that. So, and UAMPS has looked at that. They don't foresee an issue with that qualifying use. And as time goes on, obviously our loads are going to grow, and that just makes it more so that we would consume it internally. The mechanics are that it goes from one entity to the other. In the end, really, as far as UAMPS and Washington City, we really don't see any difference other than the savings at the end. And that's really the bottom line of what we're after. I could say I'm not a super duper expert. I've learned a lot in the last few months on this. But if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask Matt while we've got him. Sounds quiet.
The only thing I had a question on, was this about the same as the savings of the last one, or is this just a little bit higher? Like
I
half
went back
percent
through
or-
my notes, and on the gas one, I had put in 7.5. I don't know if that's changed, Matt, or if I had the wrong number last time.
So it ultimately the savings depend upon the pricing on the bond when the bonds are actually issued. And so there is some flex, but we would take a very conservative approach and say, hey, we don't want to enter into this transaction unless we can have at least an 8% savings. Over the last several years, there's been between 7 and 12% savings. And when we actually have Southeast issue the bonds, we would be waiting for a time in the market when we have a prime opportunity. So I would say going in, we would look for at least an 8% savings.
What is the prepayment amount? Do we know?
The-
The total bond? Because we're just only even a part of the overall structure, right, Matt?
that is correct. Total combined going in, and this is in flux a little bit, but the net present value, right in the range of $460-ish million.
Again, that's not just the UAMPS piece, it's part of a larger,
The entire,
Mhm. And so that represents the money that would be paid for the PPAs over the next 25 years. So bonds are issued, and then we receive, the Washington City perspective is, it's just a lower invoice that comes to the city each month for that same power. And then on the back end, you have banks taking advantage of the difference between taxable and non-taxable debt.
thanks, Matt. Any other questions? because we would plan on this being put on the April, what's next week's meeting? The 10th? The 10th is where we would plan on putting it on the city council agenda, so. The approval to sign it is basically what we're doing. I think it shows, I want to say it was sometime the second quarter, which I guess we just barely started the second quarter, so. Yeah, so. Yeah, and as Matt had indicated, that may vary depending on the opportunity with those rates, and hopefully they can pounce on the best that would provide the most savings.
Any other questions or?
I don't.
Where we already talked about it, it's just a
Yeah.
matter, it's just a different project, so we kind of.
Correct.
All those other questions we had the last time we talked about this.
Same exact concept, just instead of gas, it's the power going through it's the same transaction, actually. They're the same prepaid.
Yeah,
No questions? Anybody got a motion then?
yeah, I'll go ahead and motion to approve the resolution authorization, tax certificate and agreement for UAMPS firm power supply project and related matters to the city council.
I'll second it.
Okay, so Andy did the first, Todd did the second. Dick, do you want to start us on a vote?
Saunders, aye.
Todd? Todd, we didn't hear you.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Spriggs, aye.
Andy?
Palmer, aye.
And Dinsmore, aye. Okay, thank you. The next item of business is regular business, operations report, generation report.
Okay.
Rick?
Thank you, Matt. Unless you're a glutton for punishment, we'll let you drop off.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Matt.
joining us.
Mhm.
Okay, the rest is pretty much just our standard reports, and one item that I want to bring up, just to at least get your cogs turning a little bit, that we'll be probably discussing in more detail in the not too distant future on some stuff with solar. Growth, Drew reported at our staff meeting today, March had 103 permits, which I think, what did he say? 5 out of the last 6 months have been over 100. That doesn't account apartments, or doesn't account for apartments. That's townhouses and single family. Of course, that's not all north of the river. That'd be in the entire city, but those are really strong numbers, despite all the interest and pricing and all that that's going on. Staff-wise, one good thing that's happened in the last couple of weeks, Jessica Black passed her first-year meter tech test, which is great. She did a great job and is excited to continue learning there. So our March peak was just a little over 16 megawatts, which was about a megawatt less than the previous year. I think everybody knows that March is actually a pretty mild month. It didn't really have any extreme cools or didn't warm up much, so there was a lot of not heating or cooling going on. As far as the generation, Jake and Tyler are working on several maintenance items to get ready for the upcoming run season. They've had the catalyst for the exhaust cleaned, doing the swamp cooler prep. It's amazing how much crud built up, and some of you remember old swamp cooler days. I don't know if you do. Yeah. So they're an interesting maintenance. They're replacing some gaskets we needed to on the exhaust and just doing odds and ends to get ready for a good run season. So exit 11 or the Main Street project, our part of it's basically done. We're doing, I guess, more some support things. The most recent one we did this week, you've seen the sound wall going up and them drilling. So the 69 line that's actually just this, it ends on this pole that crosses the freeway. We de-energized that for them, rerouted the power around so they could do that. We'll be doing some more closer to exit 10. Similarly, that freeway crossing there when they put the sound wall there. So most of it's kind of, like I say, in a support role. So just a few pictures. I think the entire project with all the landscaping and everything, I think it's around the end of the year. They do have one-way traffic going under the bridge now. You might wait anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes, depending on how you hit it. I did hear at staff meeting that they did over the weekend open two-way traffic under there, but it lets some traffic through and then it stops traffic to allow construction stuff to go back and forth. So don't run the red light. Like the other day, I bet you there was 6-8 cars ahead of me that just went right through, and I don't think the cars behind me were too happy because I just waited for the light. So anyway, this is on just west. This is the new Main Street. And this is they call it a soil nail wall. I think last month I showed where we had a track code tied to this pole. And so this is close to the end result of what they were doing. They drill back into the soil, I think it's about 15 feet or so with big rods and grout them in, and then basically make a retaining wall. And there's just a few more pictures. This is same pole up on top and kind of see. So they got within, it's about 4 feet, 5 feet from the pole. And looks like it did a really good job, and don't anticipate any long-term issues there. And this is from that pole looking, this will be the on-ramp, southbound on-ramp area. And this is looking to the north of Main Street in the new alignment, the curb and gutter going through here. This is the Boilers Park here. And this is a retaining wall that they installed so that we didn't have to modify this pole. So all in all, the projects went well. In fact, this is a hot off the press today picture, kind of contrasting the first one. That's the off-ramp, southbound off-ramp. There will be car barrier that goes along this, which is really good to keep them out of our sub. I did confirm that today. But, they're progressing and doing well. We may have to extend the fence right up here because of this slope. You could probably make a case it compromises that 7-foot requirement just a little bit. So when they're all done, we'll evaluate it and may put a 1-foot extension or something on top of that fence for, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 feet just to make sure we're in compliance. So, but it changes a little bit day to day, week to week, and I want to wait till it's all said and done, but they're moving right along there. Another construction project is, you may or may not have noticed, is the Grapevine trailhead and substation site up there by exit 13. Lots of activity. This is our crews. There's a line that cuts through that site right now, overhead line that feeds the wells up in the Grapevine area. And what we'll end up doing is we'll, on this pole, it'll go underground, kind of go through the site, and then I'll have a picture at the other end, it'll come back up. And so we had to install 2 new poles to provide a dead end spot for it. And this is kind of standing above the substation site looking back. Eventually this pole will come out and the subsite is right here. So it's turning out really nice, with one exception, is they found a fair amount of groundwater. So we're gonna have to do a French drain system to basically dewater the substation site. So they've hit a little bit of water in a couple different areas up there, so found out why the cottonwood trees that were up there, where they get their water. The substation block wall will be right along here. And so I'm standing up what will be a parking lot for the trailhead, and then there'll be a restroom up in that area as well. This is the conduit. This is a new pole we set as well. Conduit coming down into the substation site. And that's the riser. And so this is the new entrance where they have the tortoise fence and you have to hop over that. Will be there. And so the restroom will be just to the right of this picture. And I think they've got the footings poured. I haven't been up there for a week. They may have probably working on plumbing and stuff for that. Again, just a different view. So this whole area will be the substation. And as part of this project, what we'll end up with is the substation site graded, pretty much all the conduits from the substation site out to the external world where we'll interface with our existing system, and a block wall. And so it'll be kind of a clean canvas, ready to go when we start actual construction. We have the transformer, the circuit breaker, the reclosers, and the regulators out to bid. They're due, I think it's April 17th, if I remember right. It'll be very interesting to find out prices, because I'm probably gonna need to be setting down. And then also the delivery of those major items will help dictate how we plan. Because if it takes 2 years to get the transformer, there's not a lot of sense of putting all the foundations in now and having them set for 2 years. So we'll, from a budget standpoint, look at it and try to flatten that out as best we can. So any questions on either of those projects? So it's kind of fun to go up there if you're like me. You gotta avoid the really big scrapers and stuff, but it is neat to see them work, so. Yeah, don't go through the site. There is a temporary route that comes out right here, and there's signs that point you, and they were started the first week. There was a kid up there on a motorcycle going all through the site, and I think people have finally adjusted and they don't have quite as many cutting through the site as they used to. I know the first weekend people cut the fence down and just walked through, and anyway, people are funny. We'll leave it at that. The AMI project had a kind of a brief kickoff meeting a week ago Monday. And they're starting to work on the paperwork stuff we've got to do with them. And I'm hoping by our next meeting, we can have at least a rough schedule of when we could anticipate things arriving and when we could actually estimate that we'd start being able to deploy meters and things like that. I suspect you guys may be some of the first guinea pigs to test that out, so we'll keep you posted on that. So not a lot of progress. Like I say, it's the front end, gotta get all the paperwork and the lawyers to get happy with stuff, and that's always fun. They rebuilt the system kind of behind St. Helens Restaurant. There were some really low wires in there, and we installed 4 new poles and kind of cleaned that up a little bit. And then there's several other places where we found, poles that are deteriorating to the end of their useful life, and working on those. The crews will be starting next week on the reconductor of the east portion of Telegraph from probably close to like the new Hamilton Motors back to about 1100 East. They'll be reconductoring that section, so you'll see the crews working down there. That's a project that we've had on plans for 2 or 3 years, but between COVID and various other things, haven't quite got to it. So they're hoping to do that, and then we'll evaluate at that point if we have enough time before summer to complete it from 300 to, like I say, the Hamilton Motors area. There's a switch there, so. Then the crews for their safety training, they found a new bucket rescue system that actually is much more cost effective, and the crew feel like it's safer and quicker if they had to get out of the bucket. And so if you look close, can't remember which one this is, it's just climbing out, and basically it's a repelling rope system. And so they practice that, so obviously if you had to use it, and so they keep this system in the bucket, so if there's a problem, they'd be able to get out, kind of a self-extraction system. So, and it was kind of interesting, the little carabiner, and again, I'm sure it has roots in mountain climbing. If they go too fast, it'll slow them down and stop them. So they have to kind of get in between of to control the descent rate. So, let's see. For solar applications, try to report on that each month. We had 8 in March, actually, which is a little bit lower. 3 of them were additions to existing system, either adding panels. A couple of them just added batteries, so they didn't really change the capacity. Pole attachment policy was approved by council on March 27th. In fact, I think I was successful on that one, not to even say a word, right, after the work session. They just approved it. So that was my goal, is not to have to say anything. Which is the timing is very good because Lumen has submitted a very large application for pole attachments, as well as underground encroachment permits throughout the city. Pretty much the older part of town, it appears that they're got plans to basically rebuild their system, which is going to be really good for the customers, because they'll probably have the same great speed I have at my house, which is horrible, because they're on copper. So we're working with Lumen, and you'll probably see a lot of activity on that in the near future, it looks like. So getting that pole attachment agreement through the approval process, so we can say, well, before we approve these, you've got to sign on the dotted line for this. It will help a lot going forward. So, may have reported last time, but the tree trimming for this year's done. Other than onesie twosies that we find here and there, but the main, where we have them come in for a couple months, just trimming trees, that part's complete now. Jordan's done a real good job on streetlights, keeping those on and up. They were out hanging Iron Man and Cotton Days banners today, so you'll see that change. I think most of the others I've reported here. Outage wise, actually, it was a good month. There was a couple real small ones, a secondary that affected just a single house, and I think we showed you the pictures of the car that smashed that one piece of equipment last month. So that was the biggest one. We had one dig in to repair. So, yep, and it still remains a hit and run, unfortunately. So we haven't been able to track down the culprit. The other thing I wanted to show you, and actually on the kind of a good news side of things, our wholesale power costs for February was just under 7.5 cents, which graphic wise is this little purple here in January and February. So that's the lowest we've had in 2 years. So that was good. I'd like to take full credit for that, but I think part of it, I think we've done a better job of planning and forecasting, but the market's been crazy soft for the last 6 months. I mean, just really low. And I'll show you here in a minute on some other what's been going on. And then and what that translates to on the PCA front is it continues to go down. So the February one was just barely over a cent. I think it was 1 cent and 2/100 of a cent. So 1.01 cents, or 1.02 cents. So hopefully that trend will continue. I think comparing a year ago to what we're seeing now, I expect it to come down just a little bit more. So again, much better than this craziness that we experienced through 21 to late 20 to early 22. And of course, this drop here is when we made the rate adjustment. So, but you can still see the trend on the PCA has been down since that time. So, and I haven't gotten any calls complaining about the downward trend for some reason. This is our peak load. Again, we're right in the mix. You know, those months is just, again, temperature dependent. And we had a really mild February. So, and March will, I think, be the same. Will probably be very similar to previous years. And that shows up as well. And this point's a goofy data point, but the average usage for residential, so we take all the residential kilowatt hours, divide it by the number of customers, and you come out with this average. So you can see it was down slightly from previous years, but again, with the mild temperatures, not heating or cooling, that's to be expected. So anyway, I like to see it graphically and where you can compare back for, what's that, almost 7 years now. So, any questions on those? Yeah, much better, easier conversation to have when they're going that direction. And of course, there is a finite limit of how far they'll go, but I think there's a little bit more room that we'll see. So the last area before we get into the UAMPS is we have the different solar projects coming on now. Red Mesa's been on for not quite a year, but we're getting close to a year. Steel Solar 1, about a month and a half, 2 months. And then the bigger one that we'll have coming on will be in May, is we'll start seeing that come on as Steel 1B. But it's, as Jake and I have looked at it, it's creating some interesting challenges as well on resource planning and those kind of things. So our current, the one trigger that will bring it, I guess, to a head where we'll have to have some discussion is, right now our solar policy is set at 4 megawatts or 4,000 kilowatts. Right now we have about 3 megawatts or 3,000 kilowatts installed, with about another 200 in the wings. And then I probably have applications for another 100 or so that I haven't seen drawings yet. So basically that leaves about 800 kilowatts left on that policy. And typically what we've done, when I started, I think it was capped at 500, and we moved it to 1,000 and then 1,500. And we'll probably, recommend doing that again. But there's a few things going on. One that I just want to get your thoughts going, and we can have a more detailed discussion at a future date. We have 3 different projects that are proposing quite large solar systems. 2 of them are commercial, 1 of them is an apartment complex. On the order, if they were all to come in on what they're asking for or wanting to put in, it would be well over 1 megawatt. So that would basically take us from 800 under to a few hundred over what the current policy is. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. In 2 of the cases, they're proposing like double what their current load is, and I don't think we want to encourage that. And what it's doing, and it's not just here, but now that we're getting more solar in our resource mix, it's becoming more in focus of what's happening on a larger scale. And so this is a daily report from March 29th. And this is our load, our resources, and the difference. So this means we were actually overscheduled just a little bit, which is a decent position to be in. And then this is how all of our different resources, the IPP, CRIS, this is our 5-year purchase, the PX, wind, PACE, and NEBO. So they all just get summed up, and that's this total column here. So below that, this is the daily market pricing. And so you can see early in the morning on this particular day, and this is indicative of how soft the market's been. So this $26, if we were short, we would buy that. If we're surplus, we'd get paid 18. So easy conversion, $26 per megawatt hour is 2.6 cents. Right now, our solar policy buys back at 6.5 cents, or $65 a megawatt hour. So, and then as the day goes on, of course, 1 o'clock in the morning, as the day goes on, you can see what happens to pricing over, they call it the solar hours now, because the whole market is getting flooded with the solar. So we're talking 0.5 cent to 1/10 of a cent we could have bought it for. So we could have bought it for 5 cents or $5, and we're giving them credit for 65. So again, this is probably the one extreme that way. Of course, during the summer, it'll change and it'll go up, but we'll have several months that we're long on resource. And so as whether we add it or our customers add it, it's going to make this situation where we're going to have to, so what we do, if we end up being long, we have to back down like our NEBO schedule. So in that case, Now we're paying for a fixed asset that we're not using. We're parking the car in the driveway until we need it in the summer. So it's, like I say, this year's been a bit unusual, so I don't anticipate. In fact, on the broader market, UAMPS reported that there were hours where the pricing went negative. So they would pay you to take power so it can get, and then you can see as the sun goes down, the prices start to come back. And so as the market in general floods, and so it creates some interesting things. What signals do we want to send to our customers? What type of program do we want to encourage, you know? Because this is happening, and we're going to be adding more solar on the utility scale as solar or Steel 1B comes on. And so it just is going to be an interesting challenge. So we'll, like I say, we're thinking about some different approaches. Potentially, I think the AMI metering system can help. You know, maybe we can even get fancy as a different buyback at different times of the day, which is basically what's going on with us, which would mean it would encourage people to put in a battery system so they're shifting when they're doing that to the other. Of course, that comes with a cost to them, but at the same time, it doesn't make a lot of financial sense if we can buy a hamburger for $5 to pay somebody $65 for it. So if that makes sense. So just to give you a little idea of, and again, I don't have the answers of what we want to propose at this time, but that's just a glimpse of what's going on the system in general. And that's what's happening. And I think it's going to continue because that's really all that's being built. There's a ton of solar, some wind.
Are any of these new solar projects gonna have battery?
The steel projects, they're in negotiations of working with the developer, hoping that they'll give us some numbers at our meetings in April, to at least get an idea what the batteries will cost. There's another project called Fremont that it's a 99 megawatt project with about 50 megawatts of battery for 4 hours. So again, it's still, even if it has battery, it helps, but it's still limited of what goes on. So as that saturation level of renewables comes into the overall system, this problem is just being amplified. And so we need to figure out how to best react, be fair to customers, and be fair to, quite frankly, to customers that don't have solar. Because those fixed costs, we can't just shift those to other people as well. So anyway, just some interesting things that have been going on. Like I say, we've never had these large installations being proposed until recently. So we've got that on that front. We've got some of this pricing mechanism.
Larger applications, are they proposing that?
One of them wants to do a decently sized EV charging station with it, and they would have batteries so they'd keep their demand down. And the idea is when the car comes in, they'd discharge the batteries, and then they would charge them a more gradual than a all at once, or could charge it with the solar.
I can see how long term we may end up 10 years down the road, somebody wants to put solar to make it mandatory that they have battery, so that they don't skew the.
Potentially, yes, and I think everybody's seen the ads with the little guy that says, you know, Rocky Mountain will pay you to put in a battery. This is exactly some of the reasons why. And, you know, maybe we consider that, but then in some way, we would have to have control of that battery of when it discharges, if that makes sense, you know, to use it to our benefit. So there's there's a lot of moving pieces there that we've got to kind of unpack and figure out what's going to be best for the utility and the customers in general, so. And of course, the most likely time they're going to be sending power back to us, these same hours, because they're off at work. So, you know, so their loads will be down when their solar's up, and that's the most likely scenario to send power back to us when we don't need it. So interesting. Again, I just wanted to, I don't have any proposal or anything specific, but you know, you may in your spare time do a little research and see what different programs or other things are out there. So anyway, just like I say, it's just kind of come to the forefront this last couple months that we thought we need to be watching this and figure out a way to address it before it becomes a negative for us. Any questions as far as local system? If not, I'll just give you a quick report on UAMPS. We sent out the UAMPS summary notes. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. The UAMPS meetings this month will be on, I think it's April 16th and 17th, down here at the Hilton Garden Inn. So if you really have a hankering, you can come enjoy those meetings. You should have got an invite to the UAMPS Toolbox on April 17th. It's about noon to 4 o'clock. There'll probably be similar information on some things, but they've got UFS coming to talk about, escapes my mind, but they've got a couple speakers coming from out of the area, and not necessarily UAMPS people, but they'll feed you lunch at noon. If that's always a good carrot. So, but if you're interested, you should have got the invite from Jackie. If not, send an email to me or Rachel, and we can get that. They just need an RSVP so they can plan for the food. So if you're able to fit that in, it would be great. Like I say, it's here local, so I'm kind of excited not to have to drive to Salt Lake this month. At least for that purpose. I got kids up there, so I may end up, who knows. We continue to, look at evaluating resource opportunities. I think our next biggest challenge is our current 5-year contract ends in 27. And so we need to figure out how to fill, when that drops off, how we fill that gap, if you will. Could be a new project, could be another contract, all those kind of things we're looking at and trying to figure out the needs and what's going to be the most cost-effective way to address those. And we're looking both potentially internal type projects, UAMPS projects, whatever it might mean. We've talked to a couple people. We need to pursue a little more, potentially even putting our own batteries in a couple spots, because we could potentially charge them here locally during those hours when we get them much cheaper rate, and then discharge them over the peak. So from what we've seen on smaller scale like that, they're really pricey, like on the order of $200 a megawatt hour to run it back and forth. So we're looking into that to see if it's even an option. On the Central St. George project, we have our spring, if you will, task force meeting next week. They'll talk about the upcoming summer. PacifiCorp finished their upgrade on the line that feeds the Purgatory sub that about a third of our load comes from. So that's a good thing. It'll give us a little more capacity in that area. They put a higher capacity conductor in. And then we're, through UAMPS, working on negotiating some of the other improvements that'll be coming up in 26 and 27. NEWO project's been running really well. February, they had a capacity factor of 89%, meaning they were running 89% of the time, which is pretty high for a peaking plant like that. We're base loading it more than it had been for a long time. The damage, we showed you the pictures of the plane that hit the line last month. That damage has been repaired. They replaced about 25 feet of that wire either side of where it got damaged. Payson's in the process of, the water source for that project is the effluent from the Payson sewer system. And they're in the process of doing upgrades. And so between that process, and they can bring in some culinary water, there could be some water challenges there at times. And we've made it really clear that if there's a challenge or you have to do something, don't do it over the summer to where it would compromise how much that plant can put out. So UAMPS is watching that very close and working with Payson City through that process. We think it's a good thing, and I think it is, that it looks like we may be able to get some grant funding from the federal government, fed through the state, to do rebuild the Uri area up in there. That's one of our older overhead areas. Rachel and I are struggling through some of the paperwork process of that. So at times I wonder if the baggage is worth the benefit, but we're trying to stay positive. We just found out we had to fill out 2 more forms today. So just when we thought we were done, we found out we weren't. But we'll keep you posted on that. And if we can work through the paperwork process, that'll be a good thing. It's a, yeah. It's pretty much replacing what's there, but certainly if there's need for streetlights and stuff, that can be looked at, if that's what you mean. So, and right now it's about $143,000, so it's a decent chunk of change. Again, it's been a little eye-opening of seeing all the hoops and the baggage and different things. So trying to be, it's testing my patience at times. We've talked about the solar projects. Red Mesa's been doing well, and it looks like they're must be getting pretty close to the COD on the Steel 1A, because they were supposed to be able to run, I think it was like 2 weeks of full output. I noticed the schedule today was pretty much full output all day, so that'll be a good thing. And then 1B is supposed to start mid to late May. We did start receiving a little bit of the IPP purchase the latter part of March, and then I think it's from now to the 10th. They have it shut down for maintenance, so and then that'll start up again once they're done with that. On the geothermal projects in Nevada, I'm hoping that we'll see a term sheet with basically pricing parameters at our meetings in April down here. So not much to report on that other than they're working on it, and hopefully we'll get that. They're looking at a couple natural gas plants and hope to have those sites selected, at least preliminarily, for these meetings as well. So And I mentioned the Fremont one. That one actually has one of the biggest things it has is the, they call it a large generator interconnect agreement, LGIA. They've already have that in the hand, and so that puts them ahead of anybody else that's coming along. And that's a big deal right now, because some of those permits can take up to 2 years to even get, or to even find out what they're gonna charge you to interconnect. So them having that far down the path is looking promising for that. And it, with the batteries, puts it in a blended cost in the 60 to 70 range, which is really pretty good. Again, 4-hour battery, so it helps, but it doesn't completely address some of those issues, so. The wind projects in February actually had pretty good months. Horse Butte in Idaho was about 43% capacity factor. And the Pleasant Valley in Wyoming was about 33%. So usually anything 30 or above's a pretty good capacity factor for the wind. And then the CFPP, we're still just in the winding down process. They're finding out that it's taking a little bit longer to work with the DOE to get all that wound down, and which asset goes to NuScale and which goes to DOE and all that kind of fun stuff. So imagine that, a federal agency taking some time, so.
With the legislation that was passed, is there a chance that could come back on, that
Which was
project?
the IPP?
Uh-huh.
I guess there could be a chance. I think they've got some real hurdles. They don't have a coal supply. They don't have transmission rights. I don't know that they have water rights. So they'd end up with a plant with, I guess you'd have an engine but no car to go around it. So there's a lot of details that would have to be worked out before that would happen, so. But yeah, actually both the IPP and the Hunter plant have experienced significant coal shortage issues. So that's right now IPP's running 1 unit at bare minimum, and it hopes to stockpile coal so they can fire them both up over the summer. So it sounds good on the surface, but I think there's a lot of work to be done before that could be a done deal. So, but we'll definitely keep an eye on it, and if there's opportunities that make sense, probably from a off-taker standpoint, a purchase agreement wouldn't be too bad. But I don't think I'd want to get in an ownership position on a coal plant at this point. I think that's a pretty risky proposition with the EPA. So that's my report. Hey, right before 6.
Okay, any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Okay, any other comments, questions, concerns that we need to bring up this month? No? Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Dick did the first, Andy did the second. Todd, would you start us on a vote? Andy,
Palmer, aye.
Dick,
Saunders, aye.
Dinsmore, aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. We will meet again next month on the 7th of May. Okay, see you then.